The story begins when someone gets summoned and welcomed by Lady Nolan to Mildgrad. Suddenly, she apologizes to him as the summoning was meant for someone else. He gets confused as she was just welcoming him a while ago. She then explains that he was somehow selected by the random summoning through a reckless spell, and she had to intervene as such summonings could collapse Mildgrad. He then learns that he was a mistake and asks to be returned. However, due to some past patchwork done by Nolan to prevent such summonings, he couldn't go back. She also adds that his original body has already been destroyed due to blowbacks from the spell. He is then suggested to retry his life at Mildgrad. He hesitates, but learns that if he went to Cydonia, the place from where he was originally summoned, it'd end badly for him, as he was a mistake. She then reveals that he's going to be sent to a fantasy world, with her blessing buff similar to video games with all the cool stuff like dragons and monsters. He hesitates, but she reminds him of her blessing buff, to which he agrees, sort of. He then learns about his new life as the jobless Takumi Iruma through status. He is shocked as in his previous life, he was a Japanese salaryman, but Nolan tells him to forget the past. She then talks about the two types of jobs he can do in Mildgrad: production and combat. Takumi, to no surprise, chooses the production line of work as an alchemist. Nolan then sends him off after integrating him with spells and buffs he might require for his new life. Takumi crashes into his new existence and immediately forgets his previous life after seeing his reflection. He checks his status box for information and learns that Nolan's blessing has granted him some spell abilities. He checks out his new abilities, which turn out to be elemental magic, before heading to search for civilization. On his way, he discovers more of his abilities, modeling, which allows him to craft anything he wants. He also finds out that Nolan has blessed him with an infinite storage box, which he uses to store all the herbs he collected before. Suddenly, a girl, Molly, runs to him as she is being chased by a rabbit. After finding out that the creature is carnivorous, he has no choice but to kill it in defense. He thanks Nolan again for protection, which she denies. He then learns that his job has been unwillingly switched to warrior. After finding out that Molly lives in a nearby village, he decides to go with her. At Cydonia, the original summonings are confused by their situation. They're then welcomed by the Empress, Elizabeth, who vaguely tells them that they're summoned as heroes. Akane, using her skill blessed by Nolan, gets suspicious of Elizabeth. Takumi is welcomed to the Board village by Molly's family and Bobon, the blacksmith. He also learns that the village is bountiful of herbs and ores. They even build him a new house and learn that he can use magic during the process. Takumi gets more excited about his new life. After the house has been built, Takumi changes his job back to an alchemist. He then begins to process the ores he mined with Bobon through alchemy, which taxes his mana. In the evening, Molly arrives to deliver him dinner, only to see him in a dried-out state. He then gets reprimanded by Martha about mana usage before being given a healing potion. He then goes back to upgrading his alchemy, but under Martha's and Molly's supervision. He also hones his blacksmith skill under Bobon, using magic. Later, he asks Banga for some potions, who tells him that they're just basic potions. But Takumi tells him about making newer potions using his herbs and those potions. Banga then agrees to give him his potions under the condition of buying Takumi's potion later. He then goes mad scientist to replicate the older potions, but is not satisfied with the outcome. Takumi then furthers his quest by eating random herbs, one of which would have killed him had it not been for the purification magic. He's then confronted by an angry boar, which he tries to attack using his arsenal to no effect. He also sees an injured spider, which surprisingly tries to help him, but it deals no damage as well. He then gains the intuition to perform alchemy on it and succeeds in defeating it. He also heals the spider, in turn taming it. He hesitates at first but makes it his pet, Maple, who evolves out of pure happiness. To everyone's surprise, he takes the carcass to the village and scares them after showing Maple. The village organizes a feast and talks about Takumi's bright future. Nolan is also proudly looking on and gets asked about her plans with Takumi as she buffed him with great spells. But Nolan denies any motives and looks on. Some nights pass, and one morning, Takumi finds himself trapped in a silk ball. He scolds Maple and asks for its telepathic apology. The spider tearfully apologizes, but tells him that he is always busy, making her feel lonely. Takumi realizes this and promises to play with it, which makes the spider jump on top of him with happiness. Martha gets there and is shocked to see the two in a precarious position. Takumi tries to rationalize his situation, but she is more focused on the spider silk hanging around, before looking at them with great evil in her eyes. Martha then shows off the silk shirt she created while Maple gets praised. Takumi is surprised to learn about the value of spider silk, before being more surprised to see Martha and his pet communicating. He asks Maple if she wants to play, but the table is turned as it tells him that it's busy. Takumi then heads out to do his own thing, while wondering how he's going to tell the villagers about his plans to study alchemy in the city. He gets a new set of armor before learning that he has the full support of both Boban and Banga for his future endeavors, who have even decided to send him off with a trader from Bolton. He then thanks the two for everything. He later meets up with Martha, who is out to throw some inedible rabbit parts. She tells him that it's poisonous for consumption, but he uses his purification magic to make it safe. She is surprised to see him use light magic before telling him that it's very rare, and to not show off this skill to just about anyone outside the village. Seeing the kindness and love of the villagers towards him, Takumi spends a week on the development of the village using his magic, including strong border walls as well as better plumbing. The Bolton trader, Papek, arrives and is shocked to see the village. He meets up with Banga, who introduces him to Takumi. He hands them a potion and tells them that he's delivered many more to Banga's house to be used in time of need. Papik is shocked to see such a potion, and even observes it under the sun. The rest of the villagers come to bid him farewell and gifts him a cloak. Takumi is overwhelmed by this gesture and thanks them wholeheartedly. He also tearfully declares the village as his hometown as the carriage moves on. In the caravan, Takumi meets up with Papek's bodyguards. After a brief introduction, they are shocked to see that he has a pet spider before trying to tame it as well. Meanwhile, Papek is more interested in his potion, and even tells him that he'd buy some. Suddenly, they're surrounded by goblins, which gets the guards excited as they're itching to hunt some monsters. The trio easily slays the goblins, and the trip continues peacefully after that. They reach the bustling city, and after being in awe, Takumi heads out to the Adventurers Guild to register himself and Maple. He learns from Hans that there is no registration of alchemists, but he can register as a low-level adventurer, which does not put his life at risk. Later, he sells his potion to Papek at a hefty price offer, which makes him suspicious. As he tries to conjure up his motives, he rents a beautiful mansion under the Papek company's Thomas, also at a cheap price. As he discusses his moving in on the way back, he is bothered by the smell. Thomas then talks about the sewage problem and how the nobles only hire priests for periodic purification, despite the availability of purification devices. He also tells him that such devices are expensive as they need to be excavated from dungeons. Takumi and Maple move into the mansion the next day. He first gets to the most important addition to the house, a commode with a bidet. After he completes his project, he helps Papek get free from Maple's entertainment. A blissful Papek then asks for the restroom, and Aruma allows him to use the restroom. Papek gets more shock after seeing the toilet, the mechanism of which Takumi explains but accidentally reveals the use of light magic. Takumi then swears him to keep it a secret, but Papek is more interested in mass manufacturing the toilet. He also tells him that he can get a slave since he is short-handed. Takumi is a bit hesitant, but Papek talks about how the church is going to be after him if they learn that he can use light magic, and that getting a slave can ease them off. Takumi is still morally against slave trading, but after getting a quest message from the guild, he thinks of getting one. Papek takes him to a trustee slave company where he meets up with an elf girl who tells him to go home, telling him that he's a lost child. Later, Takumi meets up with the company owner, Mulan. Papek tells her that Takumi is uncomfortable with hiring slaves. Takumi then adds how slave ownership is banned in the place he was born. Mulan assures him that their rights are protected and gives him a gist of his slave contract, which talks about basic living rights and maintaining confidentiality. She also talks about the categories of slaves and the reason why they're categorized before asking Takumi's type. She gets annoyed by Papek speaking on behalf of Aruma before poking him for his opinion. Takumi then talks about how he needs someone to help him with the production while doing the chores, as well as protect him while harvesting and completing the guild's tasks. Mulan then suggests he take 2 slaves and introduces them first to Maria. She says that Maria is an orphan well-versed in doing chores and calculations before introducing her to Takumi. He asks her if she can handle such a large mansion, to which she agrees. He then innocently flirts with her by telling her she's cute, but Maria misreads that by telling him she won't sleep with her. The two then fluster around before Mulan tells him that they don't have any war slaves. Maria talks about Sophia, but she gets cut off before being sent off. Mulan then tells them that they'd contact him if such slaves are found, but he asks her to see Sophia due to his intuition. As he wonders about who she may be, Mulan takes him to meet Sophia, the elf girl from earlier. She tells him how Sophia is physically impaired as well as cursed, but Takumi still requests to talk with her alone. Takumi introduced himself before grabbing her by her face to check her status, only to find that she had maxed out all her stats. He then agrees to take her with him as well, to Mulan's surprise, but she's happy to see someone take a liking to Sophia. Takumi then gets done with the contractual paperwork before sealing the deal for both of the slaves with magic. He takes them home and introduces them to Maple. He even offers them their rooms despite Sophia's uneasiness. He also allows them to use the master bathroom before him. In the sauna, Maria talks about how they're lucky to have Takumi as their master, but Sophia reveals why she feels uncomfortable. She tells her how she saw no details of Takumi in their contract and thus is suspicious of him. In the evening, Takumi adds more to the suspicion as he makes dinner for everyone. Maria, though, is hurt as it's her job to cook, comparing herself to a toilet with an apron on. He tells her she can clean up after and allows them to eat with him. They get hesitant as it's frowned upon to eat with the master, but he tells them it's okay and even asks them to address him by his name. Maria is gleeful, but Sophia is still suspicious of Takumi. The next day, after Takumi gets his item from Papek, he decides to visit the church. He prays to the statue of Nolan and asks her why she hates Cydonia, seeing how the nation controls the town. Suddenly, he gets teleported to Nolan nicely and quickly. She also nicely and quickly explains how Cydonia opposes her and her Church of Creation through their Church of Divine Light. She also warns Takumi to be more careful now, as part of her blessing may not last much longer, and he will meet ill-intended people here and out. He then takes it upon himself to carve out his destiny. Meanwhile, at Cydonia, the summoned are being groomed to become heroes, especially through the manipulation of Elizabeth. Akira and Yamato are being trained violently through provocative methods, while Akane refuses to train, all the while wondering how dangerous Elizabeth is. Later, Takumi gets welcomed back by Maple and quickly hides his item in the inventory before Sophia can pick it up. Her suspicion gets the better of her as she follows him to his workshop after he refuses to eat. She then sees Takumi cut himself up with a knife dipped in some kind of potion before jumping at him after hearing him spout Maria's name. Takumi gets knocked down by her as she warns him not to do anything to Maria, but she passes out. He notices that she has extreme exhaustion and injury on her left through her stats. He tries to heal her, but her body resists due to the curse. After finally healing her, he uses Dispel to break her curse as well. Later, Sophia learns that her curse has been lifted through Maria, and after hearing Takumi's explanation of how he leveled up to break the curse by cutting himself, Sophia finally agrees to Takumi being her master. All the while, Nolan watches on gleefully.